Let me begin by asking you to imagine the soft glow of dawn, just before the sun crests the horizon, when the air still holds the hush of the night. In that moment, the world feels quiet and almost expectant. It's a time when possibilities loom larger than obstacles, a time when each of us, if we choose, can forge a calm strength that will guide us through the coming hours. I have lived many years, and in the course of those years, I have learned that how we greet the morning shapes our entire day. Over time, those mornings shape our character, and our character shapes our destiny. Each new sunrise offers a fresh start, an invitation to steady ourselves before the bustle and noise overtake us. There is, I believe, no better arena for Stoic principles, timeless as they are, than these early hours when the mind is both vulnerable and open. Now, if you are new here, please like the video and subscribe. Statistics show that only 15% of my audience is subscribed to the channel, so if this content has helped you in any way, I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'd like to share with you a reflective exploration of 10 practices a Stoic might integrate into a morning routine, each serving as a small but potent anchor for success, both in the worldly sense of achieving goals and the deeper sense of living in accord with one's values. Success, after all, need not be measured merely by promotions, numbers in a bank account, or the approval of others. The Stoics teach us that true success emerges from self-mastery, a steady mind that remains gracious and unshaken by life's fluctuations. And it is my conviction that a well-crafted morning routine can become a daily crucible for forging that self-mastery, enabling you to approach your responsibilities and relationships with clarity, restraint, and compassion. Before I launch into the specifics of this routine, allow me a moment to speak from my own experience. In my earlier days, I was someone who rose from bed at the last possible minute, stumbling half awake toward coffee or chores, letting the day's demands instantly crowd my mind. My heart would already be racing with tasks and deadlines, and I would consistently feel behind. Only years later did I realize how that frantic start eroded my capacity for thoughtful, measured choices throughout the day. My irritability spiked, my discipline wavered. The Stoic texts I admired, writings by Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, advised cultivating a morning practice of reflection and calm. At first, I resisted. I was too busy, I told myself, too weighed down by obligations. But eventually, mounting stress taught me I needed a different approach. So I began experimenting with small changes, rising slightly earlier, sitting in a chair just to breathe, reading a short passage from a Stoic essay, noticing how these acts influenced my mood and decisions. The difference was astonishing. Within a few weeks, I felt more collected, less prone to lash out in meetings or at home, more anchored in a sense of personal agency. And so, over time, I refined these practices into a cohesive morning ritual, 10 steps that to this day I still largely follow. Not every step is monumental on its own, but woven together, they transform the dawn into a powerful ally. They're about more than just being productive. They are about living intentionally, stepping into the day with a calm mind and a firm moral center. Now, in the spirit of sharing and in the hope that it might serve you as well, I want to lay out those 10 elements. But rather than bullet them out superficially, I'll tell you a bit about the why behind each, how it relates to the Stoic viewpoint, and how, in my experience, it has fueled not only external achievements, but also an inward sense of harmony. Let me call this process a narrative walkthrough of the morning, so you can imagine yourself adopting these steps in the hour or two after waking. I'm not suggesting you must do them all, or that my method is the only method. The Stoics, after all, taught flexibility. You adapt principles to your life. But I do suggest that each piece fits a larger tapestry that fosters success, both in your endeavors and in your capacity to navigate life's trials without losing yourself. First, I rise earlier than absolutely necessary, just enough so that I'm not thrust into the day's chaos right away. This is not about punishing myself or chasing the 5 a.m. club, but about claiming a pocket of quiet. Maybe it's half an hour earlier, maybe an hour, depending on my schedule. The core idea is to give myself time to breathe before the demands begin. When I first made this change, I resisted it because I prized every minute of sleep. But in truth, the sleep I was getting in those last frantic minutes wasn't restful, marred by subconscious anxiety about my alarm. Waking a bit earlier allowed me to meet the day on my own terms. Let me begin by asking you to imagine the soft glow of dawn, just before the sun crests the horizon, when the air still holds the hush of the night. In that moment, the world feels quiet and almost expectant. It's a time when possibilities loom larger than obstacles, a time when each of us, if we choose, can forge a calm strength that will guide us through the coming hours. I have lived many years, and in the course of those years, I have learned that how we greet the morning shapes our entire day. Over time, those mornings shape our character, and our character shapes our destiny. Each new sunrise offers a fresh start, an invitation to steady ourselves before the bustle and noise overtake us. There is, I believe, no better arena for Stoic principles, timeless as they are, than these early hours when the mind is both vulnerable and open. Now, if you are new here, please like the video and subscribe. Statistics show that only 15% of my audience is subscribed to the channel. So if this content has helped you in any way, I ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'd like to share with you a reflective exploration of 10 practices a Stoic might integrate into a morning routine, each serving as a small but potent anchor for success, both in the worldly sense of achieving goals and the deeper sense of living in accord with one's values. Success, after all, need not be measured merely by promotions, numbers in a bank account, or the approval of others. The Stoics teach us that true success emerges from self-mastery, a steady mind that remains gracious and unshaken by life's fluctuations. And it is my conviction that a well-crafted morning routine can become a daily crucible for forging that self-mastery, enabling you to approach your responsibilities and relationships with clarity, restraint, and compassion. Before I launch into the specifics of this routine, allow me a moment to speak from my own experience. In my earlier days, I was someone who rose from bed at the last possible minute, stumbling half awake toward coffee or chores, letting the day's demands instantly crowd my mind. My heart would already be racing with tasks and deadlines, and I would consistently feel behind. Only years later did I realize how that frantic start eroded my capacity for thoughtful, measured choices throughout the day. My irritability spiked, my discipline wavered. The Stoic texts I admired, writings by Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, advised cultivating a morning practice of reflection and calm. At first I resisted. I was too busy, I told myself, too weighed down by obligations. But eventually, mounting stress taught me I needed a different approach, so I began experimenting with small changes, rising slightly earlier, sitting in a chair just to breathe, reading a short passage from a Stoic essay, noticing how these acts influenced my mood and decisions. The difference was astonishing. Within a few weeks, I felt more collected, less prone to lash out in meetings or at home, more anchored in a sense of personal agency. And so, over time, I refined these practices into a cohesive morning ritual, 10 steps that to this day I still largely follow. Not every step is monumental on its own, but woven together, they transform the dawn into a powerful ally. They're about more than just being productive. They are about living intentionally, stepping into the day with a calm mind and a firm moral center. Now, in the spirit of sharing, and in the hope that it might serve you as well, I want to lay out those 10 elements. But rather than bullet them out superficially, I'll tell you a bit about the why behind each, how it relates to the Stoic viewpoint, and how, in my experience, it has fueled not only external achievements, but also an inward sense of harmony. Let me call this process a narrative walkthrough of the morning, so you can imagine yourself adopting these steps in the hour or two after waking. I'm not suggesting you must do them all, or that my method is the only method. The Stoics, after all, taught flexibility. You adapt principles to your life. But I do suggest that each piece fits a larger tapestry that fosters success both in your endeavors and in your capacity to navigate life's trials without losing yourself. First, I rise earlier than absolutely necessary, just enough so that I'm not thrust into the day's chaos right away. This is not about punishing myself or chasing the 5 a.m. club, but about claiming a pocket of quiet. Maybe it's half an hour earlier, maybe an hour, depending on my schedule. The core idea is to give myself time to breathe before the demands begin. When I first made this change, I resisted it because I prized every minute of sleep. But in truth, the sleep I was getting in those last frantic minutes wasn't restful, marred by subconscious anxiety about my alarm. Waking a bit earlier allowed me to meet the day on my own terms. Stoically, this resonates with the principle of controlling what I can, my approach to time, rather than letting events control me. Upon getting out of bed, I move into a few minutes of silent presence. Call it meditation, call it mindful breathing. I simply sit or stand, focusing on each slow inhale and exhale. Perhaps I notice the subtle ache in my lower back or the tension in my jaw. A Stoic might label this as an exercise in self-awareness, acknowledging that my body and emotional state are part of my sphere of influence, something I can choose to moderate with reason and calm. My mind may wander to tasks ahead, but I gently bring it back to the breath, reminding myself that the present moment is where I truly hold agency. Often this quiet interlude reveals whether I'm carrying leftover anxieties from the previous day or a lingering sense of dread about what's to come. Rather than pushing them away, I see them for what they are, mental constructs, not inexorable truths. This vantage sharpens my capacity to handle them stoically. By the time I stand up from this brief stillness, I feel I've reasserted my rightful place as the pilot of my inner life, not a passenger buffeted by random impulses. Next, I read a short excerpt from a Stoic text or another philosophical source that resonates with Stoic values, something akin to a daily reflection. It might be a few lines from Epictetus on distinguishing what is within our control from what isn't, or a passage from Marcus Aurelius reminding me that many petty irritations come from our own mental framing. The point is not to devour chapters, but to glean a seed of wisdom that orients me for the day. This morning, reading acts like a compass. On days when I skip it, I notice a certain drift, a faint susceptibility to trivial frustrations. When I do read, it's like I've eaten a nourishing moral breakfast. The Stoics emphasized that we should constantly remind ourselves of core principles, lest we forget them in the rush of daily life. By placing this reading early in the morning, I ensure that the day's events have less power to derail my Stoic composure. After reading, I pause to reflect on the day ahead, what tasks await, which meetings might prove tense, where potential conflicts could arise. This isn't dwelling on them anxiously. It's more of a calm mental rehearsal. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote about expecting ungrateful or difficult people not to become cynical, but to prepare to face them with patience and reason. By naming the day's likely challenges, I reduce the surprise factor. If I anticipate a tough negotiation at work, I can decide in advance that I will stay measured, avoid personal attacks, and stick to facts. Or, if I see that the day includes a tricky family conversation, I remind myself that loved ones are not my adversaries, even if we clash. This mental rehearsal aligns with Stoic negative visualization, picturing what might go wrong or who might test me, so I can greet it calmly instead of being blindsided. A short reflection, perhaps just 2 minutes to scan the day's schedule, grounds me in the Stoic principle of readiness. I then practice a brief gratitude, enumerating a few blessings or positive aspects of my life. It might be my continuing good health, a supportive friend, a stable roof overhead, or an upcoming project that excites me. This Stoic gratitude is not about ignoring life's hardships. It's about correcting the default negativity bias that can overshadow our perspective. By consciously acknowledging what is going well, I free myself from the gnawing sense that nothing is enough. Stoicism warns against letting envy or dissatisfaction corrode our peace. Gratitude in the morning wards off that discontent, reminding me that while challenges exist, so do many gifts. Approaching the day with a balanced sense of what I do have fosters a humble contentment that ironically makes me more productive. Because when I'm not stuck in a complaining mindset, I have more energy to address real issues. At this juncture, I often transition into light physical movement. Call it a quick stretch, a short walk, or a brief workout if time allows. Why is this Stoic? Because we exist as embodied creatures, and caring for our body is part of fulfilling our duty to ourselves and to society. Stoics never advocated extreme asceticism that breaks the body, nor indulgence that weakens discipline, but a middle path that keeps us functional and resilient. A 10-minute routine, perhaps a few push-ups, some yoga poses, or a gentle walk outside, wakes my blood, clarifies my thoughts, and signals that I take responsibility for my physical condition. Over time, this discipline influences other choices, like mindful eating or not letting stress tempt me into harmful habits. The wise Stoic recognizes that mind and body interlink. A neglected body can hamper rational judgment, as I've experienced in times of poor health when my irritability soared. So each morning, that small act of physical care lays a foundation for the day's demands. Once I've moved, stretched, or walked, I begin preparing for the day more concretely, perhaps showering and dressing, but I do so with an air of deliberation. Stoicism suggests we approach even mundane tasks with presence, not mindless haste. As I wash or dress, I might revisit the lines I read from Marcus Aurelius, or reaffirm my plan to keep a level head in that upcoming meeting. If a swirl of anxious thoughts about the future arises, I remind myself, now is the time for grooming, not for catastrophizing. I will address the meeting once I'm calmer. This step of mindful grooming becomes a subtle practice of living in the present moment, an echo of the Stoic principle that we do each thing in its proper time. We treat the body and outward appearance with modest respect. We do not become vain, nor do we become careless. We stand at the midpoint, caring enough to present ourselves neatly, but not fixating on superficial flair. This sets the stage for a self-assured walk into the world, free from the mental clutter that arises if we rush through these tasks while mentally lost in hypothetical problems. After grooming, I typically spend a moment reviewing a short priority list for the day. I do not let it balloon into a massive to-do. Instead, I pick the top 2 or 3 tasks that truly matter for my professional or personal life. This is a Stoic expression of focusing on what is essential. If I accomplish those priorities in alignment with virtue, meaning I do them thoroughly, ethically, and with mindful presence, then even if minor tasks slip or unforeseen chaos erupts, the day still carries a sense of purposeful success. We can easily get lost in trivial errands, losing sight of our deeper aims. By clarifying key priorities in the morning, we assert control over our direction, a hallmark of Stoic practice. We don't try to micromanage every event that might happen. We simply identify the targets that deserve our best effort. This also prevents us from becoming overwhelmed, a hazard in modern life. Each day brings countless distractions, but if you have stoically decided on your core tasks, you can gracefully say no to lesser demands or handle them more flexibly. If my schedule permits, I also incorporate a small act of thoughtfulness or kindness before stepping out the door, perhaps writing a supportive note to someone facing challenges, or sending a brief message of appreciation to a colleague who helped me recently. Stoics remind us that we are social beings, interconnected with others, and that virtues like empathy and generosity bind us to the broader community. Doing a small kindness early in the day sets a moral tone. It nudges me out of self-absorption and fosters goodwill that can ripple outward. Even if the rest of the day is hectic or fraught, I can recall that I started it by contributing some measure of positive energy to another person's life. Over time, these small acts deepen my relationships and remind me that Stoic living is not isolated Stoicism, but an engaged Stoicism that sees virtue as communal. Finally, I am ready to truly enter the day's arena. I might glance at the news or check urgent messages, but now from a place of composure. I do not let them hijack me, because I've anchored my mind in Stoic reflection, physical readiness, a moral sense of gratitude, and clarity about priorities. By the time I walk out the door or open my laptop for work, I feel prepared to handle tasks and interactions with calm discernment. I am not perfect, of course. The Stoics never claimed we become invincible, but I am infinitely better positioned than if I had rushed out of bed, immediately scrolling through social media, letting a wave of external stimuli shape my mood. By shaping my morning from within, I retain my moral and emotional center. That, in essence, is the fundamental reason these 10 Stoic practices matter so much. They place you, each dawn, in the role of the architect of your attitude and your day's structure. Instead of being a mere reactor to what the world throws at you, you are a creator of your mental environment. The Stoics taught that while we cannot control external events, like an unexpected crisis at work or a rude stranger, we can absolutely cultivate the internal framework with which we respond. A consistent morning routine rooted in Stoic principles fortifies that framework, ensuring that even if the day's storms blow fiercely, you have an anchor. That anchor is not dogmatic ritual, but a living practice that each of us can adapt according to our nature. Does this daily routine guarantee success in every external sense? Of course not. Fortune remains unpredictable. But it does guarantee that you approach life from a position of relative calm, integrity, and self-knowledge. Over time, such an approach often leads to better decisions, stronger relationships, and a more stable sense of contentment. The Stoic trifecta of success. Even if external accolades or wealth slip through your fingers, you remain composed and purposeful, forging what the Stoics call the only real good, a virtuous mind unwavering in the face of adversity. In subsequent parts of this video, I'll delve deeper into how each of these practices might be customized or expanded, and I'll share some personal anecdotes about stumbling blocks I encountered when first incorporating them. But for now, let this first segment stand as an invitation. Begin your day by claiming your mind, your breath, your body, and your moral compass before the world can claim them for you. Embrace the dawn as an ally, not an enemy. Let Stoic wisdom guide your initial hours so that your entire day reflects thoughtful intention rather than reactive chaos. That is, in my experience, how a morning routine grounded in Stoic principles becomes a wellspring of both external success and the deeper, more precious success of aligning daily life with your highest values. If you recall, I began by describing how I went from stumbling out of bed in a rush, letting my mood and time be dictated by outside forces, to a more intentional approach, guided by Stoic principles. That shift was neither quick nor simple. It demanded an ongoing willingness to examine myself, to see where I was squandering the early hours on mental clutter, and to gradually shape a routine that aligned with virtues like self-awareness, discipline, and compassion. Now, in this second part, I want to explore in greater depth what it actually feels like to integrate such practices, and some of the pitfalls and discoveries that emerge along the way. Because it's one thing to outline 10 things every Stoic should do, and another to actually fold them into real life, day after day, despite the swirl of obligations and the creeping weight of old habits. Let me begin by recalling a period in my life when I was struggling the most with morning discipline. I was juggling a demanding job that required frequent travel, while also trying to support my aging father's health needs. I would often roll out of bed, already checking emails, bracing myself for flight itineraries and phone calls. The idea of giving myself a full hour of quiet reflection seemed almost laughable. Who had the time? My phone alarm, set for the last possible minute, would jerk me awake. I'd blearily shower, scarf down something for breakfast if at all, and rush out. By midday, my stress levels soared, my patience wore thin, and I'd meet each new challenge with a sense of dread rather than composure. Every evening I'd collapse in bed, promising that tomorrow I'd do better. Then tomorrow came, and the cycle repeated. Eventually, frustration reached a tipping point. I realized I wasn't living up to my own values shaped by Stoic writings that called for presence of mind and self-mastery. So I decided to experiment in earnest, carving out some version of the routine I described in part 1. The first challenge was waking earlier. I set my alarm just 15 minutes before usual, promising myself I'd gradually build from there. Even that small shift felt jarring at first. Sleep felt precious. But I forced myself up, reminding myself that if I wanted transformation, I had to accept some discomfort. Over time, those 15 minutes became 30, then 45, as I came to appreciate that stolen pocket of silent time. Once I managed to rise earlier, I faced the question, what do I actually do with these quiet minutes? That's where the second step, mindful breathing, took hold. At first, I found it oddly uncomfortable, sitting in stillness right after waking, eyes closed, simply noticing my breath. It felt unnatural for a restless mind accustomed to instant tasks and distractions. My thoughts would race. I have emails. I need to check flight updates. But I persisted. The Stoics teach that to govern our mind, we must first observe it. So I let the racing thoughts come and go, returning attention to the slow rhythm of inhale, exhale. Over a week, I noticed a subtle shift. That swirl of anxieties began to quiet down faster each morning. By the time I stood up, I felt an unusual steadiness. I wasn't cured of stress, but I had a foothold of calm before the day's storms. The next piece, reading a short passage from a philosophical or reflective text, became my anchor. Sometimes it was a paragraph from Marcus Aurelius, perhaps his reminder that today you might meet ungrateful or difficult people, but recall they act from ignorance, not malice. Other times I'd read a snippet of Seneca urging gratitude for life's simplest blessings. That small reading, just a minute or two, set a moral or emotional tone. It was like lighting a small lamp in a dark room. Over time, these daily readings wove themselves into my subconscious, so that in the midst of midday frustration, I'd recall a line about controlling my own response, or about the impermanence of external fortune. This direct infusion of Stoic insight each morning gave me a mental script to counter unhelpful impulses. Of course, obstacles surfaced along the way. For instance, a big challenge was dealing with my phone. I'd become used to picking it up first thing, checking messages, scanning news, letting the rest of the world invade my mental space. I realized that if I truly wanted a calmer morning, I had to place my phone out of reach or set it on Do Not Disturb until I'd completed my early routine. This was surprisingly difficult at first. My hand almost itched to grab the device, worried I might be missing urgent developments. But Stoicism reminded me that genuine emergencies are rare, and that if I truly want to live on my terms, I can't let technology hold me captive from the moment I open my eyes. So, day by day, I practiced ignoring the phone, focusing on my breathing, my reading, maybe a short journaling session. Over time, the phone lost its power to disrupt my calm. Another stumbling block was fitting in some physical movement. In my busy schedule, I told myself I had no time for a walk or a stretch. Yet I discovered that even 5 minutes of gentle motion could boost my alertness and mood. Some days I did a brief yoga routine, flowing through a few sun salutations. Other days, if I had an earlier flight, I'd simply stand by the window, do a bit of light calisthenics or stretching, feeling my body awaken. The Stoic principle is that we respect our bodily vessel without obsessing over it, ensuring it remains functional for the tasks and duties we have. This quickly became non-negotiable for me. Once I tasted the clarity that followed even the simplest movement, I refused to skip it, even if it meant a shorter shower or a quicker breakfast. Over months, I found my posture improving, my stress headaches decreasing, and my overall resilience growing. The synergy of mindful breathing, reading, and gentle exercise had a cumulative effect. I felt ready to face the day's demands from a place of quiet confidence. As the routine stabilized, I introduced the practice of planning 2 or 3 top priorities for the day. Not a scrawled list of random errands, but a Stoic distillation. If I achieve these key tasks in alignment with virtue, I can consider the day well spent. Sometimes these tasks were professional milestones, like finishing a detailed report or hosting a crucial meeting. Other times, they were personal or relational, like scheduling an overdue medical checkup or calling a longtime friend who needed support. I wrote them down in a small notebook. The act of writing them deepened my commitment, and Stoic reflection taught me that if I chased trivialities all day, I might avoid tough tasks, but end up feeling hollow. By naming the vital tasks in the morning, I forced myself to confront what truly mattered. Then, whatever chaos erupted, I kept my sights on completing those priorities. This drastically cut down on the aimless scatter that once plagued my schedule. It also prevented me from being consumed by busy work that, though it gave an illusion of productivity, didn't actually move me forward. Of course, life sometimes upended my routine. Travel delays, a child's urgent need, or a sudden crisis at work. The Stoic approach in those moments was to adapt gracefully rather than lament the broken routine. If I missed my reading or had to skip my exercise, I reminded myself that the aim was not perfection, but resilience. I'd incorporate elements of the routine later in the day, if feasible, or at least carry the Stoic mindset that morning routines are a tool, not a tyrant. This helped me avoid the all-or-nothing trap. I found that even partial adherence, perhaps just a quick breath practice and a mental note of gratitude, helped maintain my center. And when circumstances stabilized, I resumed the full routine without self-flagellation. Let's talk about gratitude specifically, because that was one habit that took me by surprise. Initially, I felt somewhat awkward sitting down and trying to list what I was grateful for. It seemed forced. But Stoic reasoning reminded me that the human mind easily gravitates to dissatisfaction, envy, or complaint. By countering that with a deliberate pause to name a few things, like my supportive friend, the cup of hot coffee, or the roof over my head, I discovered a modest but consistent lift in my mood. Over time, that small act of recognizing my fortunes made me more patient and less prone to negativity throughout the day. If, for instance, a coworker frustrated me with an annoying habit, the memory of my morning gratitude often rose up, whispering, "Yes, he's irritating, but remember how much you already have going for you. This is minor. Don't let it ruin your composure." I can't overstate how helpful that perspective shift became, enabling me to brush off petty annoyances that once drained me. Once these practices solidified, I noticed changes in my interactions with others. My spouse remarked that I seemed less on edge in the mornings, more willing to engage in a light conversation rather than grunt in passing. My staff at work commented that I approached problems with a measured calm, as if I'd already anticipated them. And ironically, I found myself more productive, spending fewer hours but achieving more, simply because I wasn't lost in reactivity. This underscores the Stoic assertion that success emerges not from frantic activity, but from steady, purposeful effort, guided by a well-ordered mind. It's worth emphasizing that none of these steps are revolutionary on their own. Wake up earlier, breathe mindfully, read something inspiring, map out a few key goals, plenty of self-help books tout similar ideas. But the difference for me was integrating them into a Stoic framework that gave them moral and philosophical weight. I wasn't just adopting a hack for productivity. I was living out the Stoic belief that each day is a small life in itself, that I ought to greet it with reverence and self-command, setting my intentions before letting external events shape me. That sense of purpose prevented the routine from feeling mechanical. Instead, it became a ritual, one that reminded me of my own agency and moral aspirations. One question that often arises is, but what if I'm just not a morning person? Should I force myself to do these things when my brain is still half asleep? My reply is that Stoicism doesn't demand uniformity. If your life circumstances or natural biorhythms truly prevent an early rising, you might adapt. Perhaps do a shorter version upon waking, then carve a midday slot for the rest. The key principle is to create a brief sanctuary in each day, preferably at the start, where you align yourself with Stoic values, acknowledging your power over your judgments, clarifying your day's focus, attending to your physical vessel, and remembering gratitude. The Stoics care less about the clock time and more about the consistent practice that fosters rational, grounded living. That said, there is indeed something special about dawn, a time unclaimed by others, quiet enough to let you hear your inner voice without disruption. If that means adjusting your bedtime, Stoic discipline suggests it may be worth the trade-off. Another frequent question is, how do I stay motivated once the novelty wears off? It's a fair concern. Many of us start a morning routine enthusiastically, only to revert to old patterns within weeks. Stoicism's answer lies in reflection on your deeper why. Are you doing this just to appear more productive or to follow a trend? Or do you genuinely want to shape a day that honors your potential and fosters virtue? The Stoic path calls us to remember that each morning is an opportunity to practice self-mastery, to reaffirm the serenity that prevents us from being emotional slaves. When we lose sight of that purpose, the routine becomes hollow and easy to abandon. By revisiting Stoic teachings, reminding ourselves that a disciplined morning nurtures the kind of clarity essential for a life of reason and compassion, we stoke the internal fire that keeps us consistent. Also, noticing small benefits, a calmer reaction to stress, improved focus, builds a feedback loop that sustains motivation. The Stoics would say that virtue is self-reinforcing once we see it improving our daily experience. Let me also address how this routine might shift with seasons of life. If you are younger and single, you may have the luxury of a leisurely hour each morning. If you're older with a demanding job and a family, you might condense certain steps or rotate them. The beauty of these 10 practices is that they are malleable. The essence remains. Greet the day deliberately, center yourself, acknowledge your blessings, strengthen your body, feed your mind with wisdom, plan your priorities, and move forward with kindness. The Stoic lens says each man's routine might look slightly different, but the underlying principles are universal. Calm reflection, self-care, moral preparation, and clarity of purpose. As I integrated these steps, I eventually realized that no matter how well I plan, real life will always carry an element of unpredictability. Some mornings, I might only manage a quick breath and a reading before a child's crisis summons me. Other mornings, I might indulge in a full hour of journaling and a brisk walk. Stoicism encourages that flexibility. The routine is not a rigid rule, but a supportive framework. If circumstances yank it away occasionally, we adapt without anger. We do the best we can with what is under our control. That mindset protects us from the perfectionism that can turn morning routines into a stressor. Instead, we see it as an evolving practice that, when maintained even modestly, yields significant benefits over time. Let me close this second segment by emphasizing how the changes extend beyond personal well-being. The morning routine also influences how we show up for others throughout the day. When we begin from a place of introspection and gratitude, we tend to be more patient with colleagues, more present with loved ones, and less likely to lash out. We become an example of calm leadership in a world fraught with haste and tension. People may sense a difference in our demeanor, less haste in our words, more measured consideration when decisions arise, more kindness in small interactions. This fosters trust, synergy, and deeper respect from those around us. In that sense, the Stoic morning ritual is not a private indulgence, but a public service, quietly shaping a more harmonious environment. In the next part, I intend to delve into some real-life anecdotes, both my own and those of individuals I've mentored, showing how each of the 10 steps can play out in messy, unpredictable mornings, and how Stoic wisdom helps us handle deviations with grace. We'll also explore how these practices might link together to form a cohesive arc, so the close of one routine step seamlessly prepares you for the next. Because ultimately, the power of this approach is in its holistic nature: breathing, reading, reflecting, moving, planning, grooming, giving thanks, and offering a small kindness. Taken as a whole, they make the dawn a reservoir of composure that spills into the rest of the day, fueling success in both the conventional sense, accomplishing goals, and the Stoic sense, acting in accordance with reason and virtue. If you give them a chance, as I once did with initial skepticism, you might be amazed at the steady transformation that occurs. Deepening our exploration of how these morning practices can weave together into a cohesive, life-enhancing ritual. You see, it's one thing to talk about each element in isolation, waking up earlier, or practicing mindful breathing, or reading a snippet of philosophy, but the real magic arises when they flow together, each reinforcing the next, so that by the time you step into the day's chaos, you've already built a sense of calm momentum. In this third part, I'd like to share some personal stories, along with a few anecdotes from those I've mentored, that illustrate how each practice might play out in messy, unpredictable mornings. I hope these accounts capture the feeling of quietly transforming dawn from a hurried rush into a sanctuary of composure and purpose. I remember one grey winter morning, not too long after I first embraced this Stoic approach to the start of my day. Snow had fallen overnight, The sky was bleak, and I was supposed to drive 2 hours north for a work engagement. My old self would likely have slept until the last possible minute, then flung myself into a flurry, showering in haste, snapping at any interruption, gulping coffee while throwing clothes on. But on this occasion, I had already decided I would wake earlier than usual. When my alarm chimed, I felt the old temptation to hit snooze, blaming the snow or my fatigue. Yet I recalled that Stoic discipline means doing what we have resolved to do, not bending to momentary discomfort. So I rose. That morning, the hush created by the snowfall gave the house an almost monastic stillness. Instead of letting the chill discourage me, I found in it a kind of austere beauty, something Seneca might note as a reminder of nature's gentle severity. I wrapped myself in a warm robe and settled on a small cushion in the living room, simply breathing for a few minutes, noticing the faint crackles of the heating system, the occasional rustle of wind against the windows. My mind started to race with the day's tasks. Would the roads be treacherous? Would I be late? But I coaxed it back to the present moment each time. As I inhaled, I silently told myself, I am here. I can meet whatever comes. As I exhaled, I released some of the underlying tension in my shoulders. Slowly, a steadiness surfaced within me, as though my inner seas had calmed. This was a small slice of Stoic mastery, not eliminating all concerns, but deciding I would not let them consume me. Then I turned to a nearby shelf, took down a well-worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and opened it randomly. My eyes landed on a passage about how we should do each thing in life as if it were the last thing we do, free from distraction and with a sense of proper care. I read those lines once, then again, letting them resonate. I can't say it was some lightning bolt epiphany, but it subtly reoriented me. It reminded me that even if I were to face difficulties on the road, or if my meeting went awry, I should carry out my responsibilities with dignity and thoroughness. This short reading felt like a friend's whisper, steering me away from lazy or frantic impulses. I closed the book and sat quietly, as if letting the words settle into my mind. Next, I performed a brief negative visualization regarding the day ahead, picturing icy roads, possible delays, maybe a grumpy client or an unforeseen snag in my presentation. Far from depressing me, this imaginative step gave me a sense of calm readiness. If the worst scenarios occurred, I would adapt. If they did not, all the better. Often in life, what rattles us most is unanticipated trouble. By foreseeing challenges, Stoics believe we blunt their emotional sting. That morning, imagining potential obstacles helped me realize I had the power to leave a bit earlier, drive carefully, and if I arrived late anyway, I'd apologize gracefully without letting shame or panic derail my composure. You have now reached the halfway mark of the video. I congratulate you for trying to become a better version of yourself, and I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day," so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. After that mental rehearsal, I took a moment to note a few gratitudes, writing them in a small notebook. Even the most mundane blessings counted: the roof that kept me from the cold, the quiet sense of purpose I'd gained from my Stoic readings, the fact that my car was equipped for winter driving. Something about writing them, rather than just thinking them, gave them a tangible reality. It also diffused any frustration about the snowy inconvenience. Instead of brooding on how the snow might slow me down, I felt a modest appreciation for its calm beauty. Gratitude, I realized, can shift the entire emotional backdrop in which we operate. I then moved to some simple stretches, gentle twists for my spine, a few squats. My muscles were stiff from the chill. Part of me balked, wanting to keep it brief, but I remembered how a bit of physical movement each morning usually leaves me more alert. So I persevered, breathing into each motion, noticing how my body responded. Even just 5 minutes of consistent stretching made me feel more awake, more present in my own skin. Stoicism includes caring for our physical vessel, for how can we enact virtue if we neglect the body that supports us? By the end, I felt warm from within, better prepared to face the cold outside. After a quick shower, I settled on a structured but not overwhelming plan for the day. Get on the road by 7 a.m., call my colleague en route to confirm any last-minute details, and if I arrived with spare time, review my notes for the meeting. Those were my top priorities. Everything else would be secondary. I scribbled them in my day planner so they'd be front and center. This took less than 2 minutes, yet it cut through any swirling anxiety about the day's to-do list. Then I readied a small thermos of coffee, reminded myself not to check my phone's email bombardment until I'd at least begun the drive safely. With that, I was effectively done with my morning ritual. It might sound elaborate, but in truth it spanned maybe 35 minutes, leaving me enough leeway to depart on schedule. Driving north, I realized how different I felt compared to my old self. Instead of wrestling with frustration at the slow pace forced by snowy roads, I accepted it, occasionally reminding myself of Marcus Aurelius's counsel that nothing is served by cursing external conditions. If anything, I arrived at my appointment calmer than usual. My presentation went smoothly, and even though the client raised some tough questions, I wasn't rattled. I responded thoughtfully, acknowledging what I didn't know, promising to follow up. Later, my colleague mentioned that I seemed unflappable, a compliment I attributed to the Stoic morning regimen. Had I rushed out the door in a panic, reading emails while gulping coffee, I might have snapped at the client's queries or let impatience color my tone. But because I began the day from a place of reasoned composure, I navigated adversity with less friction. That's just one anecdote, of course. Over the years, I've heard from others who found unique ways to embed these Stoic steps amid hectic routines. A friend named Harold, a single father, told me how he used to let his kids' morning chaos dictate his mood. He'd wake to a barrage of demands and complaints. But once he started rising 15 minutes before his children, just to sit quietly and read a line or two from Seneca, he discovered it changed everything. He'd greet them with more patience, unruffled by spilled cereal or squabbles over who got the bathroom first. In Stoic terms, he had fortified his mental fortress before the day's siege. Another acquaintance who worked night shifts reversed the concept, doing a similar reflective sequence after returning home, thus framing his morning even though it was midday. The Stoic principle held, carve out a transitional space for mindful presence, reading, and gratitude so that your next cycle of wakefulness sets sail on calm seas, not rough waters. One might ask, but how do all these steps, breathing, reading philosophy, negative visualization, gratitude, quick exercise, priority setting, grooming, a small act of kindness, fit together in real life without feeling forced? The key is to let them flow as naturally as possible, guided by your personal rhythm. Some men prefer to start with movement, waking up their body, then settling down for reading. Others, like me, favor a mental focus first, then some stretches. Experimentation is part of the Stoic path. We discover what arrangement yields the most stable, alert mindset. Also, these steps needn't be rigid. If you're short on time, you might compress your reading or do a very brief negative visualization. The Stoic stance remains flexible. Do not let the perfect become the enemy of the good. A partial routine is far better than none at all. and over the weeks you refine it. Another common worry is that we might become too reliant on the routine, feeling anxious if it's disrupted. Stoicism anticipates that concern by teaching us to adapt with grace. The routine is a tool, not an idol. If, for example, you have an early flight that truly prevents your usual steps, you accept it. You might do a modified version in the airport lounge, close your eyes for a minute of mindful breathing, read a Stoic quote from your phone, reflect on the day's plan quickly, and move on. The key is carrying the Stoic attitude, calm, purposeful, self-directed, wherever you go, even if your external habits must shift. That said, I have found that the more consistent I am with the routine, the more stable my baseline, so I do try to protect it whenever feasible. In the bigger picture, these morning practices gradually shape your identity as someone who values clarity, discipline, and moral reflection. This identity seeps into the rest of your day in subtle yet profound ways. You become less reactive to petty provocations. You begin approaching conflicts at work or in relationships with a measured stance, seeking solutions rather than letting frustration flare. You take more responsibility for your emotional states because each morning you remind yourself that while you cannot control how others act, you can definitely control how you respond. That is the essence of Stoic success, living each moment with reason and virtue, unshaken by external tempests. Let me also share the story of Darius, a mentee who was deeply skeptical. He'd say, "Look, I'm not a morning person. I have 3 kids and a dog that barks at dawn. I can't afford these fancy steps." We worked together to adapt. He promised to set his alarm 20 minutes earlier, just enough to slip in a short breathing exercise and read 1 paragraph from his favorite Stoic text. That was all. Over time, he found that even that minimal routine anchored him. He noticed that after reading, say, a line from Epictetus about how we suffer more from our own judgments than from external events, he'd carry that perspective when dealing with his kids' morning squabbles or the dog's incessant barking. If the barking started, he'd gently remind himself, "I can't control the dog's bark, only my reaction. Let me attend to it calmly." He was amazed how less irritable he became. Soon, he chose to expand the routine by adding a quick set of push-ups and a gratitude note. The cumulative effect, as he described it to me, was that his mornings no longer felt like a chaotic mess. Instead, they had a small spine of Stoic discipline that held everything else together. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, pun intended. It demands patience, self-compassion, and willingness to slip and try again. Many men start a morning routine strong for a week, then revert to old habits under stress. The Stoic approach is to see each slip not as a failure, but as data. What triggered me to skip my reading? Was it staying up too late? Then perhaps I need to manage bedtime better. Did I become discouraged when I didn't see immediate benefits? Stoicism reminds us that true growth is incremental, subtle, and requires perseverance. Each morning that you show up to your practice, even if half-heartedly, you are reinforcing a Stoic muscle that values intentional living over passive drifting. Another intriguing aspect is the effect on relationships. When I finally stabilized my morning routine, I noticed that my spouse felt more comfortable approaching me early in the day because I exuded less tension. I also found that I had more mental bandwidth to give a genuine greeting or share a few kind words before we each tackled our responsibilities. The Stoic emphasis on mutual well-being means that your calm rubs off on those around you too. Mornings can be a fragile time for families. Everyone has their mini crises, so if you've prepared yourself mentally, you become a soothing force rather than another source of chaos. Likewise, in professional contexts, colleagues might comment that you arrive at the office with a composed energy rather than a frazzled vibe. That can open doors, because trust is often built on the perception that you handle pressure well. People might confide in you or invite you to higher stakes projects, seeing that you don't unravel under tension. From a Stoic perspective, that's a happy side effect of living by reason, not the main goal. Still, it's gratifying to witness how personal discipline fosters broader success. It's worth mentioning how important it is to shield the early hours from digital bombardment. Many men I know pride themselves on starting the day by catching up on email or scanning the news, believing it shows dedication. But Stoic principles caution that diving into external content immediately can short-circuit your own mental process. Instead, the Stoic approach suggests we first secure our mindset, reflect on our priorities, and perhaps read something uplifting or insightful. After that, we can open the gates to external demands. This shift is monumental. If you read your email first, your mind tangles in others' agendas, potentially fueling stress or negativity. By postponing that intrusion until you've grounded yourself, you maintain a measure of internal autonomy. Over time, this discipline can drastically reduce morning anxiety. You realize that most emails can wait a short while. Your Stoic grounding cannot. We should also talk about the final note of kindness or compassion that I mentioned in part 1. Some men find it awkward to integrate a deliberate act of kindness into their morning. But the Stoic sense of shared humanity compels us to remember that a virtuous life extends beyond ourselves. Even a small gesture, sending a note of encouragement, checking on a neighbor, setting out a cup of coffee for a partner, reminds us that our pursuit of Stoic serenity does not isolate us from the community. Rather, it equips us to be better citizens, friends, and family members. I've found that when I intentionally do something kind in the early hours, it sets a relational tone for the entire day. I'm less self-absorbed, more attentive to how my actions affect others. This resonates with the Stoic ethos that we are social creatures meant to cooperate and uplift one another. It's a subtle but powerful counterbalance to any risk of Stoic self-containment. We remain calm, but we also remain caring. To wrap up this part, I want to emphasize that these morning routines, though they might feel initially contrived or burdensome, soon become second nature. The first days can be challenging. Your mind rebels, your body craves that extra sleep, your phone beckons. But as you push through the initial resistance, you discover a sweet spot where routine transforms into ritual, carrying emotional and moral significance. You come to crave that morning stillness, that introspective moment, the bit of reading that whispers Stoic truths into your ear, the small physical movement that ignites your body, and the purposeful planning that assures you won't drift aimlessly. Each practice seamlessly merges with the next, forming a chain that leads you from the vulnerability of awakening to the confident stride into your day. In the next and final segment, I'll discuss how all of this culminates in a broader sense of success, both the outward achievements we often chase and the deeper abiding sense of fulfillment. Stoics would call living in accordance with nature. We'll also consider how to sustain this routine for the long haul, avoiding burnout or complacency, and how to adapt it gracefully as life circumstances shift. After all, Stoicism is not about rigid dogma, but about living wisely, always ready to recalibrate as reality evolves. Until then, I invite you to continue experimenting with these morning steps, refining them to suit your rhythm, noticing how each day you greet the sunrise with a growing sense of calm determination. That, in my view, is the real harvest of a Stoic morning. A quiet mastery that serves you in big and small ways, deepening your resilience and clarifying your path forward. Let me now bring this entire conversation to a close, tying together all the threads we've spun about the importance of a Stoic-infused morning routine. Over the previous parts, I traced how I and many others have come to rely on a sequence of early practices: mindful waking, a moment of breath or meditation, a short reading of philosophical wisdom, a breath of gratitude, some deliberate movement, clear priority setting, and a simple act of kindness to anchor the day in calm purpose. Such a routine, I argued, doesn't guarantee an absence of chaos, but it sets the stage so that when chaos arrives, you can meet it with a steadier mind and a more centered heart. Now, here in this final segment, I want to consider the larger impact of these morning rituals, how they ripple through not just the day, but the weeks, months, and indeed the trajectory of your life. I also wish to address some common pitfalls and how to sustain this practice over the long haul. Because if I've learned anything from years of living and studying Stoicism, it's that real transformation is less about spectacular leaps and more about consistent, patient effort, day after day, month after month, forging the habits that ultimately define who we are. To begin, let's remind ourselves why these morning steps are more than just a productivity hack. Stoicism teaches that our central endeavor is to live in harmony with virtue and reason, controlling what we can, our judgments, actions, and attitudes, while calmly accepting what we can't. By carving out time each morning to shape our mindset, we engage in the very essence of Stoic practice. We assert dominion over our immediate environment, our breath, our thoughts, our priorities, before external factors rush in. It's a daily statement. No matter how chaotic the world becomes, I start from a place of self-possession. That psychological stance underpins all subsequent pursuits. Whether you're negotiating a business deal, dealing with family challenges, or facing personal trials, you carry forward an echo of that morning composure. For me, the biggest revelation was seeing how a calm dawn influences the many small decisions that accumulate throughout the day. When I used to wake frantically, I'd be more prone to emotional outbursts, impulsive choices, or needless quarrels. Once I shifted my mornings, I found that at 2 p.m., in the midst of a work crisis, I still felt anchored, recalling perhaps a line from Marcus Aurelius about maintaining inner peace even when others panic. It's not that I never felt stress, but I had a foundation laid at dawn that reminded me, you are the master of your response, not a slave to circumstance. That's how a short breathing session and a paragraph of philosophical reading can translate into better leadership, kinder relationships, and deeper resilience. It's almost like investing a small sum daily that accrues compound interest for your character. Let's talk about pitfalls. One common issue is the gradual fading of motivation. You might start strong, waking early, reading a passage, doing push-ups, and writing down your top tasks, only to lose steam after a few weeks. Perhaps you skip a day when you're tired, then 2 days, and soon the routine unravels. The Stoic solution is to remember your deeper why. Are you doing this for surface-level reasons, or because you believe these practices align you with virtue and inner tranquility? Stoicism emphasizes the ongoing necessity of self-reminders. If you find your discipline waning, revisit the passages or principles that inspired you. Re-examine how chaotic your mornings felt before. Maybe jot in a journal how you felt on days you kept the routine versus days you didn't. Over time, noticing the contrast can rekindle your dedication. Another pitfall is letting perfectionism turn the morning routine into a source of stress. Perhaps you read somewhere that you must do a full hour of yoga, 20 minutes of journaling, 10 minutes of meditation, 15 minutes of gratitude, plus read 2 chapters of philosophy, or else you're failing. Stoicism warns against extremes. If you place unrealistic demands on yourself, you risk burnout. The beauty of these 10 steps is their adaptability. Some mornings, you might manage only a pared-down version, a few minutes of breath focus, a single passage to read, a quick statement of gratitude, and a mental check of priorities. That's fine. Stoic flexibility says, do what you can, but do it consistently. Better a simple 5-minute practice daily than a grandiose hour that you abandon after a week. Over time, you can expand or shift as your life circumstances allow. There's also the challenge of external disruptions. If you have young children, rotating work shifts, or unpredictable caregiving duties, how do you maintain any semblance of routine? Again, Stoic principle: control what you can, accept what you cannot. If your child wakes early and needs attention, you might do your mindful breath later, or skip it altogether that day without guilt. The Stoic man adapts, preserving the spirit of calm reflection, even if the form changes. Maybe you incorporate your child into a short gratitude practice, asking them what they're thankful for, turning it into a shared experience. Or if you have only 5 minutes before heading out to a shift, you do a micro routine: 1 minute of calm breathing, 1 line of Stoic wisdom, a mental note of thanks, and a quick physical stretch. The key is to remain flexible, not rigid, while still upholding the essence of self-directed mornings. Now, let's consider how to sustain this approach across months and years. One trick I found is to periodically refresh your Stoic reading source or your exercise variations. If you always pick the same passage from Epictetus, the words might lose potency over time. So cycle through different texts. Perhaps some days read Seneca's letters, other days from Aurelius, or maybe from a modern Stoic writer. Even short inspirational quotes from other philosophical traditions can keep your mind engaged. Similarly, if you do the same 5 stretches each morning, you might grow bored. Switch them up. Maybe do a brief walk outside instead. The Stoic principle is to avoid letting the routine become mindless ritual. Keep it fresh, purposeful, so your attention remains alive. Regular reflection on how these practices enhance your day also fortifies your commitment. I want to share one more extended anecdote, this time about a friend who, after adopting these practices, discovered unexpected transformations in his personal relationships. He told me that by reading a short Stoic passage each dawn, focusing on acceptance of what lies beyond his control, he found himself far less reactive in conversations with his partner. Before, if she brought up a grievance, he'd take it personally, sparking arguments. But after a few months of Stoic mornings, he would pause, recall that external criticisms need not wound him unless he interprets them as personal attacks, and respond calmly. His partner noticed the shift, asking what he was doing differently. When he explained his morning routine, she got curious and began her own version. Eventually, they started sharing a short reflection together over coffee, building a shared sense of Stoic calm. This kind of synergy, he reported, was a boon not just to him, but to their whole household dynamic. Their kids saw less tension, mealtime arguments dwindled. He credited the morning routine with seeding that harmony, planting daily seeds of rational, empathetic dialogue that flourished in the rest of the day. Stoicism is, after all, not an isolated pursuit of personal tranquility. It's about living ethically and harmoniously in the broader community. So these morning practices, though they may seem self-focused, actually ripple outward. A father who greets the day with calm reflection is more patient with his children's needs. A leader who begins with mindful breathing is less likely to snap at subordinates. A friend who starts with gratitude is more inclined to show appreciation and generosity. That's the deeper reason these routines fuel success. Not just by making you more productive or stable, but by improving the moral and emotional climate you carry into every interaction. Let's address the final question. How do I define success under a Stoic-informed routine? It's not just hitting your professional targets, though that often improves when you're more focused. Stoics define success as acting consistently with virtue, wisdom, courage, temperance, justice, regardless of the outcomes. If your morning routine helps you cultivate these virtues in your day, then you are succeeding stoically, even if external results fluctuate. Maybe you don't close a big deal at work, but you handle disappointment without compromising your integrity or composure. Maybe your family plans falter, but you remain kind and resourceful instead of lashing out. Over time, you might indeed find more conventional success, promotions or strong relationships, because people are drawn to steadiness and rational leadership. But from a Stoic vantage, the true measure is your ability to remain true to reason and virtue. In practical terms, if your daily reflection steers you to approach a challenging boss with humility and directness, you might find fewer clashes at work, leading to more opportunities. Or if your gratitude practice fosters a sense of contentment that keeps you from chasing empty consumerism, you might accumulate savings and reduce financial stress. There's a practical synergy between Stoic moral philosophy and worldly success, though Stoics caution that external achievements remain secondary to internal character. That said, it's quite natural to see improvements in outer life as a byproduct of your Stoic discipline. Morning after morning, you lay the foundation for rational, empathetic, and proactive behavior. Let me also emphasize that even if you adopt all 10 steps, waking early, mindful breath, reading Stoic lines, negative visualization, gratitude, physical movement, grooming, priority setting, connecting with nature, and a small act of kindness, perfection is not the goal. You will have off days. Some mornings the alarm might catch you feeling cranky, or your mind might wander incessantly during reading, or you might skip gratitude in a hurry. Stoicism teaches that we don't crucify ourselves for these slips. We simply note them, adjust, and try again the next day. The path to mastery is winding. Over a long horizon, the accumulative effect of these small, consistent choices will reshape how you navigate life. You become less of a hostage to mood swings or external provocations, more of a calm observer who decides how to respond. As we close out this entire discussion, let me reiterate, the beauty of a Stoic morning routine is that it's both profoundly personal and broadly adaptable. Whether you're a young professional or entering the later chapters of your career, whether you have an hour or only 15 minutes, whether you live in a bustling city or a quiet rural area, you can mold these practices to fit. The fundamental principle is that you do not relinquish the earliest part of your day to aimlessness or external demands. Instead, you set a tone of purpose and composure, weaving in elements that strengthen your body, sharpen your mind, and align your heart with gratitude and empathy. From a Stoic standpoint, each new day is a microcosm of life itself. It begins, unfolds, and ends. By shaping that beginning with conscious intent, you shape the unfolding that follows. Over many mornings, the compound effect is enormous, leading to greater clarity, resilience, and yes, success as Stoics define it. The success of living in accordance with your highest ideals, not being derailed by the inevitable turbulence of events beyond your control. And so we conclude, with that key idea in mind. The routine is not an end in itself, but a daily means to keep you tethered to the best within you. If you slip at times, let Stoic forbearance guide you back on track. If you feel the routine growing stale, refresh it with slight variations or different sources of inspiration. Above all, approach each dawn with a sense of reverence, knowing this is the canvas upon which you will paint the day's actions. A Stoic morning routine stands as both your shield and your compass, ensuring that whatever the world flings your way, you begin from a place of calm mastery. May these practices, if you choose to adopt them, bring greater fulfillment and a steadfast serenity that lasts far beyond sunrise. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day. Life often feels like a journey through a landscape cluttered with baggage, the heavy kind that clings to our minds and hearts, weighing us down with every step. Some of it is familiar, like the bitterness of a relationship gone wrong or the nagging regret of opportunities missed. Other times, it's an unnamed unease, a longing for control over things that refuse to be tamed. The art of letting go is not merely about relinquishing physical possessions or fleeting desires. It is a deeper act, one that calls for unburdening our minds and spirits from the clutches of attachment. The Stoics, with their timeless wisdom, understood this struggle intimately and offered profound guidance on navigating the inner tumult that binds us to what no longer serves us. To let go, we must first understand what it is we are holding on to. Consider for a moment the attachments that define your life. Perhaps it is an identity you've meticulously crafted over the years, a title, a role, or an image of success. Maybe it is a person, someone who once brought light to your days, but whose presence now feels like a shadow. Or it could be a memory, sweet yet tinged with pain, that you revisit in an endless loop, hoping it will yield something new. These attachments, while seemingly diverse, share a common thread. They tether us to a reality we cannot control, fostering a sense of frustration and loss. Now, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button. Only 15% of my audience is currently subscribed, so if these insights resonate with you, I'd love for you to join our community and turn on the notification bell to stay updated. The Stoics recognized this universal human tendency to cling. Epictetus, the former slave who rose to become one of the most influential philosophers of antiquity, observed, "We are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them." This insight reveals a crucial truth. Our suffering often stems not from the external world, but from our relationship with it. The attachments we form are, at their core, products of our own perceptions. We assign meaning to objects, people, and circumstances, and in doing so, we create emotional bonds that resist the natural flow of life. Take, for example, the story of Julia, a woman whose career was the cornerstone of her identity. For years, she poured herself into her work, finding validation in every promotion and accolade. But when an unexpected corporate restructuring left her jobless, Julia found herself adrift. The loss of her role felt like the loss of herself, and she struggled to imagine a future untethered from her professional title. What Julia's story illustrates is the peril of equating self-worth with external achievements. The Stoics would urge her to reflect on what truly lies within her control, her character, her values, and her response to adversity. This principle, known as the dichotomy of control, is a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus reminds us, some things are up to us and some things are not. By discerning between what we can influence and what lies beyond our reach, we begin to untangle ourselves from the web of attachments. Julia's predicament invites a poignant question. What might she discover about herself if she released her grip on the idea that her job defined her worth? Letting go, however, is not an act of detachment from life itself. It is, paradoxically, an act of deep engagement. When we release our hold on what we cannot control, we free ourselves to focus on what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, writes in his Meditations, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This inner power is the key to navigating life's uncertainties with grace and resilience. But why do we cling in the first place? At its root, attachment often arises from fear, fear of change, fear of loss, and fear of the unknown. The human mind craves stability and predictability, and we attach ourselves to people, objects, and ideas in an attempt to anchor ourselves in an ever-shifting world. Yet, as the Stoics remind us, change is the very nature of existence. Marcus Aurelius reflects, "Everything that happens is as familiar and expected as the rose in spring and the fruit in summer. To resist change is to resist life itself." Consider the case of Liam, a man haunted by a past relationship. Though years had passed, he found himself replaying moments of joy and heartbreak, clinging to the hope that he might have done something differently to alter the outcome. This attachment to the past kept him from fully inhabiting the present, as his mind remained ensnared in what could never be changed. The Stoics would counsel Liam to embrace the concept of amor fati, or the love of fate. By accepting the events of the past as necessary and meaningful, he could begin to release his grip on regret and find peace in the present. Releasing attachment also requires us to confront our expectations. We often suffer because reality does not align with the ideals we have constructed in our minds. We expect people to behave a certain way, circumstances to unfold according to our plans, and life to reward our efforts with predictable outcomes. When these expectations go unmet, we experience disappointment and frustration. Seneca, the Stoic playwright and statesman, advises, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." By tempering our expectations and aligning them with the unpredictability of life, we can shield ourselves from unnecessary pain. Imagine a teacher, Sarah, who pours her heart into mentoring her students, only to find that some remain indifferent to her efforts. Initially, Sarah feels hurt and disheartened, questioning whether her work holds any value. But through reflection, she begins to see that her expectation of universal appreciation was unrealistic. The Stoics would encourage Sarah to focus not on the outcomes of her actions, but on the actions themselves. By striving to embody virtue in her teaching, she fulfills her highest purpose, regardless of external recognition. Letting go is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. It demands vigilance and a willingness to confront the discomfort that arises when we loosen our grip on what feels familiar. For many, this process begins with small, deliberate steps. Consider a simple exercise inspired by the Stoics. At the end of each day, reflect on one attachment you noticed in yourself. Ask, "Did this serve my well-being? Was it within my control? How might I release it?" Over time, these reflections build a habit of self-awareness, paving the way for greater freedom. Ultimately, the art of letting go is an act of courage. It requires us to trust in the unfolding of life, even when its course is uncertain. The Stoics teach us that true freedom lies not in controlling the external world, but in mastering our inner world. By releasing our attachments, we make room for the virtues that lead to a flourishing life: wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. As we conclude this first exploration, we stand at the threshold of a transformative journey. The weight we carry is not inevitable, it is a choice, one that we can unmake through the wisdom of Stoicism. In the chapters to come, we will delve deeper into the tools and practices that empower us to let go with grace and resilience. But for now, let us take a moment to pause, to breathe, and to consider. What might we discover about ourselves if we dared to release the burdens we have carried for so long? Having reflected on the weight we carry, We now turn to the Stoic principles that guide us in releasing these burdens. Stoicism is not merely a philosophy of thought, but one of action, offering tools to reshape our perceptions and free our minds from unnecessary suffering. To let go, we must learn to see the world and our place within it through a lens of clarity, detachment, and acceptance. This transformation begins with understanding and embracing the Stoic truths about life and human nature. At the heart of Stoicism lies the principle of dichotomy of control. Epictetus' foundational teaching, "Some things are up to us and some things are not," underscores the importance of distinguishing between what we can influence and what lies beyond our reach. This principle is deceptively simple, but profoundly liberating. Much of the pain we experience stems from futile attempts to control the uncontrollable. Whether it is the behavior of others, the outcomes of our efforts, or the events of the world, these externalities remain stubbornly beyond our grasp. The Stoic practice, then, is to focus our energy where it matters, on our thoughts, choices, and actions. Consider the example of Noah, an artist who poured years of effort into a painting only to face harsh criticism upon its unveiling. The sting of rejection led him to question his talent and worth. Yet, through the lens of the dichotomy of control, Noah could find a path to peace. The judgment of others, no matter how influential, is outside his control. What remains firmly within his grasp is his dedication to his craft and the fulfillment he derives from creating. By anchoring his sense of purpose in the act of creation itself, rather than external validation, Noah can let go of the need for approval and continue his artistic journey with resilience. Another cornerstone of Stoicism is the concept of amor fati, or the love of fate. This principle invites us to embrace life as it unfolds, not merely to tolerate its hardships, but to welcome them as essential components of our existence. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations writes, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This metaphor captures the transformative power of amor fati, the ability to alchemize challenges into growth, setbacks into opportunities, and losses into lessons. Imagine Clara, a young entrepreneur whose first business venture failed spectacularly. Devastated, she initially viewed the experience as a personal failure, but as she explored the Stoic perspective, Clara began to see the failure as a teacher. It revealed gaps in her planning, areas where she needed to grow, and most importantly, her resilience in the face of adversity. By reframing her experience through amor fati, Clara transformed her loss into a stepping stone for future success. She let go of self-recrimination and embraced the unfolding of her path, even with its twists and turns. The Stoics also teach us to practice premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This exercise involves visualizing potential difficulties and preparing ourselves to face them with equanimity. Far from fostering pessimism, premeditatio malorum equips us with the emotional readiness to navigate life's uncertainties. By imagining worst-case scenarios, we can desensitize ourselves to fear and cultivate a mindset of calm resilience. Consider Elias, a man prone to anxiety about his finances. He constantly worried about losing his job and the repercussions that would follow. Through the practice of premeditatio malorum, Elias began to confront these fears head-on. He visualized the possibility of unemployment, the steps he would take to manage his expenses, and the skills he could develop to secure another position. This exercise not only reduced his anxiety, but also empowered him with a sense of preparedness. By rehearsing his response to potential setbacks, Elias let go of his paralyzing fear and regained control over his present. Central to the art of letting go is the Stoic understanding of impermanence. The Stoics viewed change not as an anomaly, but as the very essence of existence. Seneca writes, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." This candid acknowledgement of life's fleeting nature serves as a call to appreciate the present moment while releasing our grip on what must inevitably pass. Sophia's story illustrates this principle. After the death of her father, Sophia found herself unable to move forward, clinging to his belongings and the routines they had shared. Her grief, though natural, began to consume her. It was through the Stoic reflection on impermanence that Sophia found solace. She came to understand that her father's life, like all lives, was finite and precious precisely because of its impermanence. By cherishing the memories they had created while accepting the inevitability of loss, Sophia was able to let go of her sorrow and honor her father's legacy through her own life. Another powerful Stoic practice is the art of reframing. The Stoics believed that our perception of events, rather than the events themselves, determines our experience of life. Marcus Aurelius advises, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This teaching invites us to challenge our automatic reactions and reinterpret our circumstances in ways that empower us. Take the case of Leo, a teacher who struggled with a difficult student. Initially, Leo viewed the student's behavior as a personal affront, leading to frustration and resentment. But by reframing the situation, Leo began to see the challenges as an opportunity to practice patience and empathy. He recognized that the student's actions were likely a reflection of struggles unrelated to the classroom. This shift in perspective not only eased Leo's frustration, but also improved his relationship with the student, breaking the cycle of conflict. Letting go also demands a commitment to self-awareness. The Stoics emphasized the importance of reflecting on one's thoughts and actions to uncover the sources of attachment and their impact on well-being. Epictetus advises, "Examine yourself. Observe the paths which you have followed and the ones which you ought to have followed, and then ask why they diverged." This practice of introspection is essential for identifying the beliefs and habits that tether us to unnecessary burdens. Journaling is a particularly effective tool for cultivating self-awareness. By documenting our experiences and emotions, we externalize them, making it easier to analyze and understand their origins. For instance, Ava, who struggled with chronic self-doubt, began a daily journaling practice to explore her inner dialogue. Over time, she identified patterns of perfectionism and fear of failure that fueled her insecurities. This awareness enabled Ava to challenge these beliefs and let go of the unrealistic standards she had imposed on herself. The Stoics also remind us that letting go is not a solitary endeavor. While personal responsibility is paramount, we are social beings who thrive in connection with others. Marcus Aurelius writes, "People exist for one another. Teach them then, or bear with them." By surrounding ourselves with individuals who embody wisdom, resilience, and kindness, we create an environment that supports our growth. Mia's experience illustrates the value of community. After a series of failed relationships, she joined a support group for individuals navigating similar challenges. Through the group's shared stories and encouragement, Mia gained new perspectives on her experiences and found the strength to release her pain. The relationships she formed within the group became a source of inspiration, helping her to embrace the process of letting go with greater ease. In this second chapter of our exploration, we have seen how Stoic principles illuminate the path to freedom from attachment. The dichotomy of control teaches us where to focus our energy. Amor fati invites us to welcome life's unfolding, and premeditatio malorum equips us to face uncertainty with courage. By embracing impermanence, reframing our perceptions, cultivating self-awareness, and seeking support from others, we lay the foundation for a life unencumbered by unnecessary burdens. As we move forward, we will delve into the practical techniques that bring these principles to life. The journey of letting go is not one of sudden transformation, but of steady, deliberate practice. With the wisdom of the Stoics as our guide, we can begin to shed the attachments that no longer serve us, creating space for clarity, purpose, and peace. The principles of Stoicism illuminate the path to letting go, but principles alone are not enough. We must bring them to life through action. Stoicism emphasizes that wisdom is not just about knowing what to do, but about doing it. This part explores practical techniques rooted in Stoicism that empower us to release the attachments that hold us back. These methods are not theoretical musings, but tested practices designed to integrate the Stoic way into daily life. One of the most immediate techniques for letting go is engaging in a daily practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This is not a grim rehearsal of potential catastrophes, but a calm and rational exercise in preparing for life's uncertainties. Each morning, the Stoic reflects on possible challenges that might arise during the day. By visualizing these scenarios, we build emotional resilience and reduce the sting of surprise when difficulties occur. For instance, someone anticipating a stressful meeting might picture moments of tension and rehearse responding with calm and reason rather than defensiveness. This preparation enables them to navigate the meeting with composure, free from the anxiety of the unknown. Consider Lucia, who struggled with fear of rejection in her professional life. Whenever she prepared to pitch a new idea, she would freeze, consumed by the dread of disapproval. Through premeditatio malorum, Lucia began to visualize worst-case outcomes, her idea being dismissed, her colleagues disagreeing, or the project failing to gain traction. By walking through these scenarios in her mind, she grew less fearful of rejection. Over time, she found that she could focus on refining her ideas rather than being paralyzed by the fear of their reception. Letting go of her need for universal approval liberated her creativity and confidence. Another transformative practice is the cultivation of gratitude. While gratitude may not seem immediately tied to letting go, it plays a crucial role in shifting our perspective from scarcity to abundance. The Stoics remind us that much of our suffering arises from wanting what we do not have, rather than appreciating what we already possess. Seneca writes, "He is a great man who uses earthenware as if it were silver, and he is equally great who uses silver as if it were earthenware." This sentiment underscores the value of detachment from material possessions and the embrace of contentment. Now, some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. For Theo, a man who constantly compared himself to his wealthier peers, gratitude became a powerful tool for change. He began each day by listing 3 things he was thankful for, from the support of his family to the simple pleasure of a good meal. This practice shifted his focus away from envy and dissatisfaction, enabling him to let go of the comparisons that had fueled his unhappiness. Gratitude grounded Theo in the present and allowed him to appreciate the richness of his life, independent of external measures. Stoicism also teaches us to examine and challenge our judgments. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This principle calls us to scrutinize our interpretations of experiences rather than blindly accepting them. When we step back from our automatic reactions, we often find that the source of our distress is not the event itself, but the story we tell ourselves about it. Take Nina, who was deeply hurt by a friend's sudden distance. Initially, she interpreted her friend's behavior as rejection and betrayal. However, upon reflecting on Marcus Aurelius's teaching, Nina began to question her assumptions. She considered alternative explanations. Perhaps her friend was dealing with personal challenges or needed space for reasons unrelated to Nina. This reframing allowed her to let go of resentment and approach the situation with empathy. Instead of clinging to a narrative of rejection, she opened the door to understanding and reconciliation. Another vital technique is the practice of self-reflection through journaling. The Stoics often journaled as a means of clarifying their thoughts and aligning their actions with their values. Writing provides a space to explore our attachments, uncover their origins, and assess whether they serve our well-being. By putting our thoughts on paper, we gain the clarity needed to release what no longer supports our growth. For Daniel, a man who struggled with feelings of inadequacy, journaling became a daily ritual. Each evening, he wrote about moments when he felt unworthy, examining the beliefs that underpinned those feelings. Over time, Daniel recognized that many of his insecurities stemmed from comparing himself to an unrealistic ideal. This awareness allowed him to let go of those comparisons and focus on his progress rather than his perceived shortcomings. The act of writing transformed his inner dialogue, replacing self-criticism with self-compassion. In addition to individual practices, Stoicism emphasizes the importance of community and mentorship. The Stoics recognize that we are social beings and that our relationships significantly influence our ability to let go. Marcus Aurelius advises, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." By surrounding ourselves with individuals who embody the virtues we aspire to cultivate, we create an environment that reinforces our commitment to letting go. Consider Eleanor, a woman recovering from a toxic relationship. She joined a group of like-minded individuals dedicated to personal growth and resilience. Through their shared experiences and support, Elena found the strength to release her attachment to a relationship that no longer served her. The community's encouragement reminded her that she was not alone in her journey, and their collective wisdom helped her navigate the challenges of moving forward. This sense of connection empowered Elena to rebuild her life with renewed purpose. Meditation is another practice that aligns with Stoic principles and supports the art of letting go. While Stoicism is not a meditative tradition in the same sense as Buddhism, its emphasis on mindfulness and presence resonates with meditative practices. The Stoics teach us to observe our thoughts without becoming entangled in them, allowing us to detach from unhelpful narratives. Through meditation, we learn to sit with discomfort and observe it rather than react impulsively. This detachment creates space for intentional responses. For example, Adrian, a man prone to anger, began a simple meditation practice focused on his breath. When he felt anger rising, he would pause, take a few deep breaths, and observe the sensation without judgment. This practice allowed him to let go of his immediate reaction and choose a more measured response. Over time, Adrian found that his outbursts became less frequent and his relationships improved. Finally, the Stoics encourage us to practice acts of kindness and generosity. Letting go often involves releasing our grip on self-centered concerns and extending our focus to the well-being of others. Seneca writes, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." By shifting our attention outward, we reduce the intensity of our attachments and foster a sense of interconnectedness. For Lydia, who struggled with loneliness, volunteering at a local shelter became a transformative experience. Through acts of service, she let go of her isolation and found meaning in connecting with others. The relationships she formed through her kindness enriched her life and reminded her of the strength that comes from community. By focusing on the needs of others, Lydia discovered a renewed sense of purpose and freedom from her inner burdens. In this chapter, we have explored practical techniques that bring the principles of Stoicism to life. Through premeditatio malorum, gratitude, reframing, journaling, community, meditation, and kindness, we cultivate the tools needed to release attachments and embrace a more liberated way of living. Each practice invites us to engage actively with our journey, transforming the abstract wisdom of Stoicism into tangible actions. As we move to the final chapter, we will consider how to sustain these practices and integrate them into a life of enduring peace and fulfillment. Letting go is not a single act, but an ongoing process, one that requires dedication, reflection, and a deep commitment to living in alignment with our highest values. Letting go, as we have seen, is not a singular event, but a continual practice, a way of engaging with life that calls for ongoing commitment. This final chapter explores how we can sustain this practice, making it an integral part of our lives. Through the Stoic lens, the art of letting go becomes a discipline that evolves with us, growing stronger as we deepen our understanding and application of its principles. At the heart of sustaining any practice is the cultivation of awareness. The Stoics believed that self-examination was essential for living a virtuous life. Marcus Aurelius's nightly reflections, where he reviewed the day's events and his responses, exemplify this commitment to mindfulness. Sustaining the practice of letting go requires us to regularly reflect on our attachments and the progress we've made in releasing them. This reflection is not meant to foster guilt over missteps, but to provide clarity and direction. For instance, consider Daniel, who had embraced the Stoic practice of journaling to address his tendency to dwell on past regrets. By dedicating time each evening to writing about moments when he clung too tightly to unchangeable events, Daniel gained insights into his patterns. He noted the triggers that led him to ruminate and the emotions tied to those moments. Over time, this awareness allowed him to anticipate and redirect his thoughts, reinforcing his ability to let go. Consistency in practice is another cornerstone of sustainability. The Stoics understood that virtue is built through repeated action. Just as an athlete strengthens their body through regular training, we must strengthen our capacity to let go through deliberate and consistent effort. This involves integrating Stoic techniques into our daily routines, making them as natural as brushing our teeth or tying our shoes. Sophia's journey highlights the power of consistency. After struggling with grief over her father's passing, she committed to daily gratitude exercises to reframe her perspective. Each morning, she listed 3 things she was grateful for, even on days when the weight of loss felt unbearable. This simple practice became a lifeline, reminding her of the beauty and richness of life, despite her pain. Over months and years, gratitude became a default mindset for Sophia, enabling her to navigate challenges with grace and resilience. Sustaining the art of letting go also requires adaptability. Life is dynamic, and so too must be our approach to releasing attachments. The techniques that serve us well in one season of life may need to evolve as we encounter new circumstances. The Stoics' emphasis on reason and flexibility equips us to adjust our practices without losing sight of our overarching goals. Consider Leo, the teacher who had initially used reframing techniques to manage his frustration with a challenging student. As the student's behavior improved, Leo found himself facing a new set of challenges, balancing his teaching responsibilities with his personal aspirations. By revisiting the Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control, Leo recognized that he needed to shift his focus from external achievements to the effort and intention he brought to his work. This adaptability allowed him to continue practicing letting go in a way that aligned with his evolving circumstances. A sense of purpose is crucial for sustaining the practice of letting go. The Stoics believed that living in accordance with nature, our rational and social nature, provided the foundation for a meaningful life. When we have a clear sense of purpose, we are better equipped to release attachments that conflict with our values and aspirations. Purpose acts as a compass, guiding us toward actions and mindsets that align with our true selves. Mia's story illustrates the transformative power of purpose. After leaving a toxic relationship, she initially struggled with feelings of anger and betrayal. Through Stoic mentorship and reflection, Mia began to uncover her deeper values: kindness, growth, and connection. She redirected her energy toward these values, volunteering at a community center and pursuing personal development. This sense of purpose gave Mia the strength to let go of resentment and focus on building a life that reflected her ideals. The Stoics also teach us the importance of accepting setbacks as part of the journey. No practice is ever perfect, and the path to mastery is rarely linear. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This humility allows us to embrace mistakes as opportunities for growth rather than sources of shame. For Adrian, who had used meditation to manage his anger, setbacks were a natural part of the process. There were days when his temper flared despite his best efforts, leaving him frustrated and discouraged. But by reflecting on Epictetus's words, Adrian reframed these moments as valuable lessons. Each setback became a chance to refine his practice, deepening his understanding of his triggers and responses. This resilience enabled Adrian to stay committed to his journey, even when progress felt slow. Community plays a vital role in sustaining the art of letting go. The Stoics emphasized the importance of relationships and mutual support in cultivating virtue. Marcus Aurelius writes, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This gratitude for connection reminds us that we are not meant to walk the path alone. Eleanor's experience underscores the power of community. After joining a support group during a period of personal upheaval, she discovered the strength that comes from sharing her journey with others. The group's collective wisdom and encouragement reinforced her commitment to letting go, while their camaraderie provided a source of joy and belonging. Elena's story highlights the importance of seeking out relationships that nurture and inspire us. As we deepen our practice, the ultimate goal is to internalize the Stoic principles so fully that they become second nature. This process, known as oikeiosis in Stoicism, involves aligning our inner world with the rational and virtuous order of the universe. By embodying the teachings of Stoicism, we cultivate a sense of peace and freedom that endures through life's uncertainties. The journey of letting go is lifelong, requiring patience, persistence, and compassion for ourselves. It is a path marked by both challenges and triumphs, moments of doubt and clarity. But with the guidance of Stoic wisdom, we can navigate this journey with courage and grace, embracing each step as an opportunity to grow. In closing, the art of letting go is not about detachment for its own sake, but about creating space for what truly matters. By releasing the attachments that weigh us down, we make room for clarity, purpose, and joy. Through reflection, consistency, adaptability, purpose, acceptance of setbacks, and the support of community, we sustain this practice, weaving it into the fabric of our lives. Letting go is an act of liberation, a return to our true selves. It is an affirmation of our resilience and our capacity to flourish, even in the face of life's impermanence. As we move forward, may we carry with us the wisdom of the Stoics and the courage to embrace the ever-changing currents of life. For in letting go, we discover not loss, but freedom. A freedom that allows us to live fully, authentically, and with unwavering peace. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos, and if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.